Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dent Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back for another episode.
Back in the studio.
Want to wish everybody a happy Hanukkah. Today's the first day of Hanukkah, right?
Yes, so first day of Hanukkah. So anybody listening, happy Hanukkah. Hopefully these holiday seasons are great to you. So we're excited to get you a happy Hanukkah episode.
It's a good day. So Matthew, what's on the agenda today?
So I wanted to talk about something. We had a meeting with a company earlier, and we were just talking about the dental marketplace, and we were talking about like the consolidation of the industry. So I want you to touch on that a little bit, what the statistics are showing right now, and what people should be prepared for.
That's a lot to how much time we got?
Typical.
How much time we got? All right, so
It's difficult.
All right, so here's I've said it before in this podcast, but I think it's a good time to look at it. Depending on whose research you take, okay, so I look at a lot of these different articles, and depends on. It feels like people that want consolidation to happen have a more aggressive timeline, and the people that don't have a less aggressive timeline. But ultimately speaking, we know by 2026 to 2030 that depending on whose research you look at it, 60 to 80% of the entire dental market will be consolidated. Okay. What that means is that basically that the mom and pop dental, $400,000 type outfit is gone, right? It's in a sense eliminated. And so, I'm not going to get into whether we want private equity into it. I know people know my feelings who've listened to this podcast, but ultimately speaking, medical made that decision years ago, and you can see whatever you want to draw from that. But when we look at it, we know that private equity has got a love affair with dental. Mm-hmm. And when we know that love affair is happening, we do know that there's going to be some consolidation. But interestingly about consolidation, I think people fear private equity coming in and taking over all of dental. And that's not actually the prediction. And that's not actually what most things are saying. And in fact, the large portion of ownership of dental will be what they call mid-market DSOs, which are DSOs that maybe are 4 locations, 5 locations, 6 locations, 3 locations.
Would that be more dental-owned DSOs?
That's right.
DDSOs?
Yeah, DDSOs, right? So there'll be a lot of DDSOs. Right? The private equity will have its play, but there'll be a lot of DDSOs. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of a DDSO, a dental-owned dental service organization, a multi-level, by the way, it doesn't have to be multi-location, but typically they are. Yeah. Is going to be prevalent in the marketplace. It is what's the trend is. When we look at business, right? And I'll tell you I'm a business consultant. You can look at your company timelines. One timeline you can look at is your own company. And by the way, it's are you in inception? Are you in maturity? Are you in growth? Are you in decline? Whatever. But industries have the exact same thing. And so what we do is when in a business, when you make a big change, a big jump in your overall structure, by the way, when a dental company has a lot of turnover at one time, which all companies do, they'll have a place where they lose 4 people and then they'll have new faces in. Yep. But then maybe that happened because they hired a consultant and they're upping their standards and upping their games. And the other people I always say when you're moving your organizational ceiling, people either get frustrated or content, right? The problem is if you don't move the organizational ceiling, right, people get content or frustrated. Yeah. You got to move it eventually. Yeah.
800,000 for 10 years.
So what ends up happening is the people that were content, when you start to move the organizational ceiling, they will leave, okay? Mm-hmm. So we call that a strategic inflection point in business, a place where the company starts to regrow and make some changes. And then ultimately speaking, there'll be some turnover, there'll be some changes in a business model, there might be new consulting in. Those things are normal. That's why when people are like, I'm scared to hire a consulting company because I might have people leave. No, you will have people leave. That's what ends up happening. I mean, you've got to understand, if you want status quo, then stay status quo. Yeah. But here's the thing, if you stay status quo, you will end up in decline. 100%, not 99, not 99.9, 100% guarantee you will end up in decline. That's 100%. The timeline is really based on a lot of factors, but you will end up in decline, okay, if you don't make strategic inflection points at some point. Now, industries, interestingly enough, have the same thing, right? Industries go into decline, right?
So dentistry is all.
Dentistry as an industry, right? Yeah. The typewriter industry, right?
Yep. The camera industry.
Right, exactly, Kodak. right, yeah. So we could go through stories and stories. I mean, let me grab my Encyclopedia Britannica really quick off the shelf, right? Industries fall off, right? Now, interestingly enough, I don't think the encyclopedia industry really ever reinvented itself, right? Which is why it died. So, and we can talk about that, but that's not the point of this podcast. But
I don't think anybody wanted it to come back either.
Industries make changes and jumps too. The dental industry is making a strategic inflection. There's a strategic inflection point going on, which means there's a change in the overall industry as a whole. Now, as I said, with a business, you can put your head in the sand and say, I don't want anyone to anyone to quit, anyone to get frustrated, anyone to leave. So I'm going to bury my head in the sand, make sure everyone else is happy, and then ride this son of a gun down to decline. Or you can be okay with changes. And so the same thing happens when we look at the overall industry. You can say, well, I'm just going to have my little tiny office and I'm going to still hand my accountant a box of receipts and I'm going to keep doing the way I've been doing it for 35 years, right? I'm not going to market because I heard it was unprofessional years ago in 1982 when I was at my meeting. And so I'm not going to make these changes. Because, I just feel like that's not, we tell ourselves it's not professional or whatever other excuse. By the way, it's an excuse. The idea of using non-professional it's an excuse, right? And so we know that the marketplace is making a move. And we have one or two choices. Like, so for instance, let's go back to one of the industries. Let's say that you were a singer or whoever made great typewriters. I'm really dating, I have no idea. So I'm not that old, right?
It had to be somebody with the name typewriter, right?
Right. Now, there are people listening to this podcast who are going like, you don't know typewriters? Okay. All right, so you definitely need to listen to this podcast. All right, so like when you were heavily vested into that industry, right, you could have made changes. In fact, let me take a more relevant example. Kodak.
Yeah.
Kodak is gone. Kodak had digital technology. We know this back in the 1970s, but they refused to make a jump on the strategic inflection point. They decided to make a change because they were selling so much of this film.
We're not doing it.
They didn't want to change, right? Netflix did make the change, right? So we look at these companies, and so you have and going back to my typewriter example, you can put your head down and say, I'm going to make typewriters. I make the best typewriters. Do you have any idea how great my typewriters are? Yeah. The keys feel amazing.
I'm using stainless steel now.
That's right. It goes chick, chick, ching, chick, chick, ching. You're like those newfangled
the keys break.
Computers don't make that sound. But here's the thing: it's just like we look at industries like digital media, where people get their news these days, right? And we look at these things and say, see, print media is dying, right? It's almost dead. And so we go and say, look, people aren't getting newspapers anymore. So we can ride that son of a gun out, but you better sell it quick because it is gone, right? Print media is gone. Now, ultimately speaking, yes, though, just like the record industry, it'll have a little bit of resurgence because people will like the nostalgia. Yeah, sure. Like but ultimately speaking, it's going to go out. So yes, will there be some small boutique dental offices that survive? Of course there will. Yep. But your odds are very slim, right? Yeah. And so what ends up happening when we look at this, we actually go, okay, if I know this is the trend in the industry, what am I doing? That's right. How do I get it? This is not Eric Morin's opinion. This is not Tower Leadership's opinion. It's not, this is a fact.
Look at the industry.
Look around you. Like, don't put your head in the sand and go,
what is happening?
This thing is changing. Now, you might say, well, Eric, I want to sell, so why would I do all those things? The reason why you want to do those things, because even if you're going to sell, you need to increase your valuation. Yeah. You need to understand what people are looking to buy. And ultimately, how do you maximize the marketplace right now and look at the marketplace and say, look, if I'm going to sell, by the way, I always tell all clients have an exit strategy. If you're going to sell in 5 years, 3 years, and I don't care, by the way, if it's 28 years. Yeah. You should have an exit strategy. Even if you're a dentist right now, graduating from dental school, buying a practice today, you should have an exit strategy. Not determined by your financial advisor, not determined by your CPA, but based on what you want and what you want your life to look like in that period of time. Now, if I've taken people that are 24 months away, I've taken people that are 12 months away, and maximize their practice, right, and the valuation of their practice, because we do know it's happening with the dental marketplace. So then how do we look at the marketplace and not put our head in the sand, and then how do we take advantage?
How do we not get swallowed? Because that's what's going to happen. Well, your mom and pop.
But I don't love the idea of saying get swallowed, right? Because I think that's such a... if I push back on that, I'm going to say, because the problem is that's like a passive, like, victim state, right? It's like, I'm going to get swallowed if I don't do that. I don't want people to come from that angle. Yeah. That's like coming from the victim. I want them to come from the aggressor, saying, how do I look at the marketplace And then a better word is take advantage.
Yeah, and I think they should do that. And I use the term swallowed because there's going to be a lot of people that are pushing them in one direction or the other. And what I mean by that is like, so if you're a $600,000 practice, you're going to have basically, if the industry's changing like this, you're going to have the financial advisor saying selling it. You're going to have the broker saying selling it. I got this deal for you. You can sell it to this person. So there's going to be people that are looking to take advantage of your situation and swallow you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think
you need to, it's time to look at things differently and say,
right.
How am I not going to be the victim? How am I not going to be the swallowed up person, but the one that's going to go?
Yeah, because scarcity mindset, this is where all that coaching about scarcity mindset comes in, because it's like, no, you can't sit back and wait. You can't sit back and watch. You can't be worried about if someone's going to sell you something, some consulting or something, and oh my gosh, what if they sell me and it doesn't work? Hell, what if you sit around and do nothing? Because I'm going to tell you what, I don't know what your consulting program that you bought or is doing is going to work for you, but hell, I damn sure know what doing is anything is going to, like, I know the results of not doing anything. It's like sitting around and not going to the gym every day and be like, well, you know how much they want for one of them newfangled memberships? I'm going to tell you, I don't know what the results of having a gym membership are going to be for you or having a personal trainer, but I know the results of not having those things, right? We do know that if we sit in a passive state and let things happen to us and let life happen to us, then we have a fundamental problem. And I would go back and analyze if that's where you're sitting. And by the way, if you are to listen to this podcast, you're like, well, shit, I got this all down because I'm ready to explode. Then why are you ready to explode? What's your exit strategy? Where's the capital going to come from? How are you going to utilize it effectively? What's your current valuation? What's your EBITDA? What do you want your EBITDA to be? What multiple are you looking for? Do you have the right team? How are you recruiting them? What's your acquisition cost? What's your acquisition team strategy? There's so much around that like, now, some of you, when I just said that, were like, yeah, got a good check mark, right? Well, I need some help there. Some of you, I just spoke Greek, and they're like, I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm just trying to get Susie up front to answer the phone correctly. So I don't
trying to get over the $1 million.
So look, just like anything else, right? You didn't walk in a dental school and all of a sudden started, right, extracting teeth, doing crowns. I mean, that didn't happen day one, I assume. And it's like any other discipline. Like, it takes time, right? The acumen takes time to accumulate. So what we do is we start to say, but I better get started because I know that if I don't have the acumen to compete. By the way, the answer is, can you stay that? Or another question might be, can I be, though, a $500,000 to $1 million dental practice and survive? Yes, but you better be really good at business. Because the only way you're going to survive is if you can find your differentiator in the marketplace.
You have to be like a VIP service or something. That's
you have to
see so many people.
You have to find your competitive advantage.
If you're going to do that model.
And your competitive advantage, by the way, takes acumen to understand your competitive advantage and then to emphasize your competitive advantage. It isn't going to be holistic dentistry, I promise you. It's going to be something that's a competitive advantage that gives you an advantage in the marketplace because you're going to be outspent on marketing, because you're going to be out-trained on training, and because they're going to have a limited amount of capital. That's right.
Like, it's going to be tenfold. I mean, if you look at the marketplace, a lot of, majority of the phone calls that I have coming in, people are trying to get over, they're trying to get 1.2 to 1.8 and then potentially buy a big location or multiple locations. And then the ones that are doing under the $800,000 mark are just trying to figure out, they've tried consultants in the past, or they're just not willing to take the step and do consulting. It's because they're trying to find a way to not be in that low percentile that could end up being swallowed up, because you're looking at it and people look at you and your business and they say, all right, where's this business going? Where can I take it? And then eventually they're going to come and knock it. I mean, the statistics are showing it. I mean, the evidence is in the marketplace that the industry is changing.
Right, yeah.
It's right. You can either choose to believe that it's changing or not, and I can always tell it just from marketing. Are you doing marketing? No, I did one campaign. Well, you're probably in that percentile that's not taking the change in the marketplace seriously, because it's happening. And the best example you always use is the medical industry. How corporations came in and completely changed the medical industry, completely changed the medical industry.
Yeah, and they realize it now, and the people are the people that realize, oh my gosh, we had it really good. We used to make 3 times as much as we make now. We're beholden to all insurance companies because the large corporate outfits, take all the insurances. Because it's interesting. I saw a thing online the other day was, for instance, it said, how to remove yourself from the PPO trap. There was some company trying to sell, but But ultimately speaking, it's not hard to get out of PPOs. We do it all the time. I cancel out insurance companies that are doing, that are $1.8 million of someone's production all the time. Yeah. It's not hard. It's got to be strategic. It's got to be scalpel. So the question is then, what I'd want to know if I was listening to this podcast is, what do I do next, right? I think that's the ultimate question you should be asking as you listen to this, which is, what am I supposed to do with this information? So Eric's telling me the business is going to be consolidated. We know the industry is making moves. So what do I do now? My answer would be that you need to get with it. You need to have a game plan. You need to know where you're going in the next 12 months, in the next 36 months, in the next 60 months. You need to know why. You need an exit strategy. You need to know how it aligns with your personal financial strategy, how it aligns with your tax strategy, how it affects your training and your team, what systems you need in place. And so, we obviously offer that at Tower Leadership, but there are other sources. But I'd say it's got to be aligned with your financial plan. That's where I think we do something that's a little different, which is it's got to be aligned with your financial goals. And that's what I would encourage people to do as well, is like you've got to understand what the future looks like. But what ends up happening is ego takes over and people start. I remember I had a conversation, a doctor came to me one time. And he said, Eric, I'm coming to you because I heard you could take me to 100 million. And I said, yeah, that's great. Why do you want to go to 100 million? And he said, testosterone. I said, I can live with that. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, look, at least he knew, and I joke about that example. That's not, by the way, we actually worked math that day, okay? Yeah. But it is one of those to go, know where you're going and why you're going there. I've had multi-location practices come to me so many times and say, that they want my help to go from 3 to 10 or something to that tune. And I go, why? And they don't know the answer. It's become ego driven. So it's got to be around a financial number. It's got to be around a goal. You got to have so much around this, way outside the scope of this podcast. But you've got to have that education. And by the way, it doesn't come overnight. It's like a muscle. Like you don't just walk into the gym and bench press. Yeah. What do you bench press now? 700, Matthew?
Like 7,000. Put another zero on there, big boy.
I heard you put up some big weight last week.
That's right. I'm on the Jordan program.
That's right. So
I think a great question to ask yourself is, are you content with where you're at?
Content where we're at?
Yeah. I think if you just sit down and you're listening to this podcast and you're trying to figure out if you're going to be part of that consolidation eventually, it's just look at your practice and say, right now, am I content with where I'm at? And if I am content, why is that? Because those are the people that are going to get past. Those are the people that aren't going to take the next step. Those are the people that aren't going to do the thing because they're content. Life is good right now. And those are always the ones that look back and say, wow, how did I get to this point?
Well, it's interesting you say content, because if we're content, then what ends up happening is, and by the way, people think people only get content at like 300 grand. Yeah. And they only get content at 800 grand. But what ends up happening is oftentimes I have doctors that come to me that are content at 5 million, right? And they go, I'm content here. And you're like, why the hell are you content? Well, because by the way, that's where the mistake slides in. Because I know some of you listening to this are going, look, if I had a $5 million practice, I'd be content, Eric. And I go, yeah, but it's not. That's not where you become content. It's why do you have a $5 million? Now, your goal might have been to be $5 million. And because here's the interesting part. When I talk to that doctor or those doctors, and when I talk to them, they're not content, but they're acting content. Yeah. If I actually ask them their goals and say, what are your goals? And they'll give me all these goals. I'm like, then why the hell are you not doing anything? Mm-hmm. Because they've allowed them. Now, remember, organizational ceiling, what I said at the beginning of this podcast was that what ends up happening is people either become content or frustrated. Now, here's the thing. Here's the interesting part. We always think it's our team. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting? We always think it's our team. And yet, here it is, the doctor. The doctor's part of the team too. And how often is the doctor? Matter of fact, one of the very best people I mentioned in this podcast that I've known in the dental industry who's not a doctor left literally somebody in the past and moved to one of our clients because she was like, the doctor was content. How many great people do you lose because they're content? That is a huge mistake. And so you can't allow that contentness to come in. Yep. You can't allow, if you're asking yourself, like, why are you content? And if you are content, then you still have to go back back and say, okay, how is this going to play into the future of the industry? How is that going to play into what's going to happen down the road?
Can I ride this contentment for the next 5 years?
I think it's important. So I think people, especially, this is a great time. It's December. It's a time to get a game plan. And it's not the same bullshit game plan you've had before. It's not the sitting down in December and going, well, I did 1.1 this year. Next year I want to do 1.4. And why, I don't know, because it sounds good. That is not a strategic plan. That is not, there's no strategy behind that. You don't even know your average revenue. You don't even know your acquisition costs. You don't know the numbers behind it. Why do you want it? How are you going to get it? What's the strategy? By the way, people saying things like, well, it's just delivering more experience. That's a lie. Yeah. Yes, that is part of it, and culture is part of it, but there's a hell of a lot more. And if you don't have the team to help you look at the numbers and look at actual results, because look, there's art and science, and the art matters big, but if you don't understand the science, and look, well, Eric, but I've got a software that has 482 dials on it. Yeah. That doesn't mean a damn thing. And I've never had somebody come back to me and say, Eric, I've got this software with all these dials on it, and that's why I hit my goals this year. Never had it happen.
It made me this much money.
That's right. You might have more information, but if you don't know what to do with the information is pointless. It doesn't get you anywhere. It's not going to move the needle. You got to understand what is your own motivation. Why are you doing this? Why do you want this? How are we going to get this? And then how do we get the team excited about that goal? And that's a lot to unpack. That's one of the reasons why we do what we do at our company is like at Tower, like I'm trying to unpack that for doctors and showing them that. Because look, whether it's me or somebody else, someone's got to unpack this for you. And it is not simply delivering some experience. It's not just knowing how to treatment plan. There's so much more to this. And by the way, this whole idea of growing revenues to grow revenue is completely a way to sell you a bunch of stuff. There is a reason why we grow. By the way, sometimes you shouldn't grow. I want to say that again. Sometimes you shouldn't grow. There are reasons why you might reinvest and not grow in a 12-month period to set you up for the future. If you don't understand that, you might be right down the long path, which is why because the people that call are jaded because of the consulting they've gotten.
It's been grow, new patient.
A lot of it's bad advice, and then I'd go back like, what's their background anyhow, right? I mean, I think that there's something to be asked about what their own background in wealth, because if they don't have a wealth background, I'm sorry, I don't care. If they don't have a wealth background, why are they consulting you on your business? Because ultimately speaking, you started a business, one of the reasons why is because you want to use it to create growth. If they don't understand capital investment, if they don't understand how to truly, grow doesn't mean anything. You can grow yourself right out of business. The truth is, unless you know, unless your person understands why, how, where does money go, where does it flow, how to manage cash flow.
What's the return on it?
And an ain't your CPA, by the way, that's not what they went to school for either. So unless you have that information, it's going to create a struggle for you, and you're going to get frustrated. And let me tell you what happens when you get frustrated. Oftentimes when people get frustrated, they quit. And then they put their head down and they get buried. And this is the last thing I want. What a great time to be doing this podcast. What a great time to be doing this. I'm like excited right now. I'm like on like a 5-minute tangent, right? Like on a 5-minute tangent. I get so excited. People, I hope, can hear the passion in my voice because this is where it's at. Going into 2021, God, first of all of you dentists out there, I'm so proud of you for what you did in 2020. I'm so proud of the work that you've put in. I'm so proud of you pushing through when you didn't have to push through, for you to make the adjustments you needed to. You guys worked so hard in 2020. I'm so proud of the dental industry. I'm so proud of the ADA. I'm proud of the state organizations. I'm so proud of the people that rallied together to make the changes that needed to be made. And so every dentist listening to this, you need to give yourself a pat on the back. You did it. Congratulations. I need you to just be proud of what you've done this year. No matter what your financial results are, I want you to be proud of the work you've done this year. Second, I want you to take the reward. 2021 is about getting your reward. And so I would tell people, encourage them at this time, in this moment, to get prepared. Because next year is going to be an amazing year in dental.
It's going to be huge.
So I care about you, and I care about your future. I care about where you're going. I care about this industry. Damn, I love this industry. And I'm so glad to be part of it. So thank you for being here today, and we'll see you next week.